Hey, I'm Fred.
And I'm Ed.
And this is Create a Generation.
Create a generation of hype.
All right, Frederico, what is happening this week?
This week we are going to be a little bit more authentic, a little bit more vulnerable, and we're going to be chatting to Study With Jess.
Find that courage, be brave, and give more of yourself, because sometimes you just know intuitively this needs to be out there. I need to put this out there.
Just a quick note, this is a cut down version of this interview. If you want to check out the whole podcast, head on over to your favorite podcast platform like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and you can check it out there. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Welcome back to Create a Generation. This week we are joined by Jess Holzman from Study With Jess. Jess, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. We finally got around to finding a time to chat and be on the podcast together. I'm so excited.
Yeah, a bit of background on that. Jess, we've been backing and forthing for, I don't know.
I want to say at least 6 months.
Yeah, it could have been pre-COVID. I think it definitely was pre-COVID, but yeah, we got there. It's good.
Finally, a lack of options. Yeah, it's just like, you know what? I got nothing else to do. Let's join these guys and have a chat.
Perfect.
Hey,
Yep.
hey. Jess, can you do me the favor and introduce who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so there are so many labels I wear. It gets confusing sometimes. So I'm a YouTube creator. My channel is called Study With Jess, and it includes study tips, tips around productivity, organization, well-being, mindfulness, basically your go-to source of support for students in high school, uni, college, and young adults. I'm the author of the study skills book, The High School Survival Guide. I run a couple of online businesses, including a stationery line called Educationery and a gift box business called Self Love Club Gift Boxes. Have I left anything else out? I guess I'm also technically an influencer because all of my work is on social media, mainly YouTube and Insta.
Well, that's
Pretty impressive.
very impressive. I think it's probably best we start at the beginning, like we do with most creators. Like, just tell us, where did all this start for you? What's your origin story?
My origin story. So my background is in psychology. I guess going back a little bit further though, this kind of links to why I do what I do, but I was a massive stress head in high school, big time perfectionist, put a lot of pressure on myself, got into my dream top choice university, studied psychology, then graduated from my undergraduate degree, did a postgraduate diploma, got a full scholarship to study a PhD in psychology, and 6 months in realized that it was not for me. I was actually, I think, a little bit lost. I was always trying to pursue goals that were not really mine. I wasn't being true to my own core values and my definition of success, and even just identifying what makes me happy in life. And a big part of that is creativity, and feeling like I'm giving back and being of value and serving others. And at that time, what I was actually really loving was designing my stationery line, Educationery, sketching till, honestly, 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes, coming up with different ideas, and at the same time had the idea for my YouTube channel. But over time, I think somehow my passion really shifted away from the stationery into creating this YouTube channel, and the more traction it got, the more positive responses it got, the more that I just realized that was my calling and that's where I needed to be. And it's led to some unbelievable opportunities too, and also just allowed me to be happier and be myself. So yeah.
So for those of like people listening or watching on YouTube, if they haven't seen your channel, what sort of content would they expect to find?
So I try and cover a range of different topics. My channel's content has definitely broadened over the last few years. So I started it 5 years ago. Back then it was really just, dare I say, it was a random study tip and a couple of DIYs in every video. So it was more entertainment for students and trying to help them increase their productivity. But there wasn't really a formula to each video. Now I try and cover a range of topics from productivity, organization, and time management to allow students to study smarter and not just study hard, because the more that you study does not guarantee that you'll get better grades. And also covering a lot of topics around well-being and mental health, because I think that plays a huge role in student life and growing up, making sure that we're equipping students with the tools that they need to navigate some pretty tricky times. And speaking, from personal experience, my final high school years and university years were incredibly stressful. I didn't have the tools to manage my anxiety and stress levels. I had no idea what work-life balance was and self-care and self-compassion, let alone what it means to embrace one's own authenticity and define your own idea of success. And I was just studying as hard as I possibly could. I wasn't really studying smart at all.
Hey, Jess, how do you put yourself back into that mindset and those put yourself into those experiences that students are? I'm curious because I don't think I'd recognize myself from my high school days. There's elements definitely.
I like that little shudder that came through.
But yeah, like I'm just really curious is how do you what do you do to put yourself back into that situation?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to being able to empathize with my audience. So I'll get questions, I'll get emails, DMs on Instagram where they're really pouring their hearts out to me. They're sharing the struggles that they're experiencing and they're being incredibly brave and vulnerable. And I think my ability to empathize with what they're going through, to have my own experiences that I can relate to and draw on really helps me.
So that community that you have, it feels like obviously it's much more than just an audience. It is that a real community. Is that fair?
It is. It really is. You get to know a lot of your loyal viewers, the ones that always have their post notifications turned on and they comment first on a video. I don't forget certain emails and messages that I get that just really touch my heart. Even this morning, I got the most beautiful message from one girl just saying how beneficial my content has been for her, and she's been subscribed for about 3 years and it's really helped her through her final high school years into university. And I shared that on my Instagram stories and it just sticks with you. And I also love that as I'm scrolling through the comments, not only replying to as many as I can every time a video goes up each week, but they'll comment to each other too. And I'll encourage them or invite them to share their tips. We create a whole list of self-care in the bottom of one video or study tips in another, or, people share their favorite organizational tip or their top priority for the day. And having that engagement really makes it feel much more like this active online community rather than an audience where I'm talking to people or at people and you're not really getting anything back in return. It just makes it so much more meaningful, and then you're able to give so much more of yourself too.
And speaking about that, like that authentic self, obviously, I think people respond and probably open up to you more because of your authenticity. I think a lot of YouTubers do struggle with that, and I think people getting into that space struggle with how to find that. You mentioned before finding your authentic self. Like, how did you tap into that?
It is so hard. Oh my goodness. Not that it's hard to tap into your authentic self. It is hard to find the courage and be brave. I feel like I'm going to start quoting Brene Brown any second, one of my favorite authors, but it's hard to tap in and find the courage and bravery to share that vulnerability online because it takes a lot of guts. You don't know how people are going to necessarily respond. Are they going to be supportive? Are they going to judge you? Fear of judgment creeps in as well. But it is vital for connection that we are vulnerable, and vulnerability is authenticity. Anytime I have a moment in my life, an aha moment, oh my goodness, I can't believe I fell for that trap again, or I can't believe I've been doing that, and I notice any unhealthy behaviors or any self-limiting beliefs and I work through them, I just know deep in my heart, I'm like, oh, I've got to put that out there now. That's got to be a video. That should be in the book. That should be in a blog, because I hold myself to this standard of you owe it to these people to help them. You need to share your lessons because there are other people going through something similar, if not the same, and they can benefit. So find that courage, be brave, and give more of yourself, because not that you have to share absolutely everything in your life, but sometimes you just know intuitively this needs to be out there. I need to put this out there. And it's a gut feeling. And I just hold myself to this higher standard of I need to put it out there. I've just got to do it for these people. They deserve it. And the more that I do that, the more meaning I find in my own career. So it actually serves me to do it too.
It just, you mentioned you don't have to put everything out there. How does someone figure out where to draw the line? Because that being so open and vulnerable all the time to, potentially thousands, if not millions of complete strangers, could be quite a burden in itself as well. So like, how do people find their balance, or how do you find your balance and others can learn from that?
I ask myself, is this relevant to what I'm doing, to my brand, to my audience? And what's the best way of conveying this message? So if I have a really tough day, I am not one to take a crying selfie and rant on social media, but I might at the end of the week think, you know what I learned? I need to be more self-compassionate. And I'm going to put up a post about the importance of self-compassion and noticing the thoughts of our inner critic and how we can grow and learn from that. And I'm going to put it out in a way that other people can be receptive to it and be inspired by it. At the same time, there are certain things in my personal life that are not relevant. Yeah, I just try and think to myself, is this on brand? Is it relevant? Is this going to serve others, or am I just ranting and using social media as a way to get attention? And am I spreading it in a way that is inspiring and empowering, or I'm just posting out negativity? So I try and think about the way that I convey the message too. It's a bit of a long answer, but that's how I go about it.
I think it's a great answer. It's like, you don't have to share everything for the sake of sharing it. There has to be a reason and value for your audience or your community. It just makes me think, Fred, we've got to take down that crying selfie of me from this morning.
You actually said that I was didn't want to put it out there, but you know what? You said it, and I'm glad you were that vulnerable.
Everything.
You were that vulnerable, and you wanted to share, and I appreciate your authenticity. I appreciate it. We should move on.
Sorry.
But they talk about authenticity, obviously, in that real self and that true self, and that authenticity is so much more valuable on YouTube than production value is, for example. And production value is easier to say, go ahead and make better quality video, but it's that authenticity which people connect with, and which is why people fall in love with their favorite creators. But you can't really say do this or do that, can you?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I need to make a video all about how to be authentic, how to live in accordance with your authentic self. But when I think about authenticity, I mean, I don't know what the exact definition of it is, but to me, it's about getting really clear on your core values. So what's really important to you and living in accordance with that. It's about knowing yourself. So I think if you haven't really done a lot of self-development, then that can be a bit tricky to know what are your triggers, what are your passions, really understanding yourself in all different situations. And at the end of the day, not trying to be like someone else. So not saying something to impress another person, not dressing like someone because you wish you were them. It's actually about getting really comfortable with who you are. I think authenticity requires a lot of self-love and self-compassion, because then you have the courage to just be you and to stand up for what you feel is important, to live a life that reflects your core values, to speak your truth. Definitely not something that comes naturally as we get older, but I do think it's something that is very natural when we are younger, because we're less conditioned to be a certain way.
What's your truth?
Oh, I have many truths. If I think about what's really important to me, relationships is top of my list. Health and wellness and mental health, being able to live a creative life, feeling like I'm being of service to others in a way that's also true to myself, so not at the expense of my own mental health, which kind of was what was happening when I was studying psychology and working on a crisis helpline. I'd be trying to help others, but at the end of the day, I would really feel like I was emptying out my cup in order to save other people. So yeah, there's a lot of things that are really important to me and that give my life more meaning or fulfillment. But I think at the end of the day, it's really just about kindness to yourself and to others.
And do you think that YouTube is good because you're able to actually show all that? It's like, I mean, where else could you really show everybody like what you believe and how you believe it?
Yeah, that's the amazing thing about social media is sometimes I feel like, it always is a vehicle for self-expression. It's a platform for sharing what you feel is really important, for amplifying your message. And I mean, you could do it with a book or a blog as well, but there's something about being able to look into a camera and to have your face out there and speak your truth, and for other people to receive it. I just think it's a pretty amazing time we're living in.
Where do you think, like, Fred, how many, you know the stats better than I do, how many minutes or hours of content's uploaded to YouTube every day?
I think it's about 750,000 hours are uploaded every day.
Yeah, just a small 750,000 hours.
It could be 720,000, but it's quite a large number. Yeah,
a big number, a really, really, really big number, and that's not all getting watched. And there's many reasons why that's not all getting watched, but one of those reasons is sort of to go back to what you said, where like don't try and be somebody else when we're talking about being authentic to yourself. Do you think that's a failing of a lot of new channels?
Yeah, it is a risk that people run, is creating a channel in an area that has so many other similar channels out there, and then also not being themselves, not adding their unique spin on it, because then there's nothing to set them apart. So I was lucky when I started my channel because there wasn't really any other study related YouTube channel that wasn't necessarily purely academically focused. Like, you had your boring lecturers giving talks about maths, biology, yay, all that fun stuff. But there wasn't really anyone doing it the way that I was doing it. So there was that gap in the market, and I saw it, I took it, and I just went for it. But even now, with lots of study tubers, being out there on YouTube, I don't think that is necessarily an issue as long as they are adding their unique spin to it. Because maybe you want to watch this person because you connect more with them. Maybe this person's also shared a bit of their story of the why behind what they do, and you can really relate to what they've gone through. There's always a way for people to connect with you, but if you're not giving them that opportunity, then I do think that you can get lost amongst the sea of content.
That is really interesting. Jess, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully we'll talk to you again sometime soon if you haven't decided we're too crazy and that's all the connection you're going to make.
Thank you both so much for having me on today. It's been a pleasure. And we finally got to chat all about social media, authenticity, vulnerability. It's been really fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Jess.
Thanks, Jess.
Bye.
Create a generation on the mic.